Commodore fans, are you ready? It's time for another episode of the Vandy 24/7 podcast on the 440 Sports Network. Keep it locked right here for the best Vanderbilt coverage. Whether it's Clark Lee on the gridiron, Mark Byington and Shea Ralph on the hardwood, or Tim Corbin on the diamond, the Vandy 24/7 crew has you covered. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Also, like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's free and easy to do. Follow the crew on Twitter, Apple Podcast, and Spotify for podcast episodes. Lastly, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, email Chris Lee at chrislee70@gmail.com. And now, pull up a chair. It's time for another episode of the Vandy 24/7 podcast.
Welcome back. Welcome back to Vandy 24/7 live here on the 440 Sports Network. I'm your host, Billy Derrick, alongside Robbie Weinstein. We are here to talk a little Vandy basketball ahead of today's matchup with Texas. 2:30 start time down there at Bridgestone Arena. So we'll talk about that and potential meeting with Texas A&M tomorrow, and then potentially maybe even Tennessee. We'll talk all things SEC tournament. Before we do, though, I want to tell you about the Wash House. They present our basketball coverage. Are you dreading laundry day? Is it stealing time to do the things that you truly enjoy? Well, let the laundry professionals at the Wash House take care of that for you. They got 2 convenient locations in the greater Nashville area. Just drop off your dirty laundry, and their professional attendants can give you back the one thing you can never have enough of, your time. Within 24 hours, you can pick up your nicely folded, fresh and clean laundry ready to be put away. Log on to washhouseclean.com or stop in today and get your time back. Robbie, we got SEC tournament today. I know you'll be down there. I'll be down there. Can't be at the Vandy game, but I'll be there tonight for some of the night sessions. But it's always good to have this in Nashville, and especially with Vanderbilt. They were in this 12-13 game last year, which I totally forgot about until a day or two ago.
A little bit of a different 12-13 this time, right?
Yeah, little bit of a different feel, but it tells you, Robbie, how much better the SEC got. I mean, the SEC was really good last year, but Vandy's in this 12-13 game again. But like you said, feels a lot different.
The 16 seed South Carolina finished dead last, and they I want to say they were, what were they, like 10-3 in non-conference, and they beat Clemson at home in overtime, and they're 2.5-point underdogs, I think, or 3.5-point underdogs to Arkansas, and they're the worst team in the tournament. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and beat Clemson earlier this year. So looking forward to it. I want to talk about first, before we talk about any of the game today, and really where Vanderbilt stands in the bubble talk, which they still don't really think they're technically on the bubble. It's been so weird, this bubble talk. Like just 3 days ago, they're a 9 seed, and then they don't play a game, and they get bumped back a couple of seeds. I think a lot of it is kind of ridiculous. But I do want to get to the news that you broke, Robbie, and of course it's public knowledge now that Vanderbilt has received a $1.5 million matching gift to Anchor Impact for NIL. And Robbie, that's a big boost this offseason. But the thing is, it's a matching gift. So that you don't know how much that could potentially be, but it is interesting to hear about that, and also probably good news for Vanderbilt fans that Mark Byington's probably staying put.
Yeah, I heard about this last week and alluded to it on the Commodore War Room message board for subscribers. Another reason why it's a great time to subscribe, and then kind of broke it more formally last night. And then it got formally and officially announced by Vanderbilt today. So just in case there's any confusion about how this works, is essentially a donor, and it's the same donor who endowed the head coach position, is saying, as part of this campaign, for every dollar people donate, I will match it up to $1.5 million. So that means you can have a total of $3 million in new NIL that comes in. And so they've got they've got a little tracker online, and they say they're at, I want to say 2.1 million, or at least it was around there last night. So given that it just got announced, I would think they probably are able to get to 3 or close to it. And that's pretty important because I think for fall, a $3 million chunk of NIL would still be very nice, but a quarterback could make two by himself potentially. And, I think there were rumors about pretty substantiated rumors about like $20 million NIL rosters and even above that number in football last season. But in basketball, this is a bigger deal because $3 million chunks of NIL at one time in men's basketball are not that common. And especially when you're entering this new rev share world where probably at some places there will be less NIL because now the schools are able to pay players directly and there will be less urgency for donors. I think getting three at one time is pretty important. And Vandy is going to need NIL for basketball because like the rest of the SEC, they're going to be putting a higher proportion of their rev share into football, whereas Big East and ACC are going to have they're going to have more money in terms of rev share to pay the players. And so the SEC schools need to catch up using NIL essentially to bridge that gap. So this will help them. I don't know where it'll put them in terms of the SEC. It's probably a little bit too early to know whether it's like top 5 in the SEC or in the middle of the pack. I think it would be competitive at the very least. So I think this helps insulate them against the possibility of dropping back down to like, Stackhouse era of woeful basketball where they didn't have any money to pay anyone. So we shall see exactly how this plays out because they're going to need to raise probably a little more money still. But I mean, it's a big positive, especially given that we've heard rumors for, like a couple weeks or a couple months rather about is Mark Byington actually going to stay? You would think that this, I think most of that was agent speak, honestly. But if you were worried about that, I think this probably makes you feel better.
Yeah, I mean, with how we've been talking about it, it was never like we were just kind of floating out there what we had been hearing. It wasn't nothing, right? But it also wasn't. I don't. No. Yeah, I don't think it was. It wasn't dire straits either. Like it,
he's gonna. It's smart. He's gonna continue to put pressure on Vanderbilt to keep investing, and we know their history with sports where the investment really has only caught up in like the last 2. I mean, with facilities in the last like 3 years and with NIL in the last 1 year, right? So, I mean, I think if you're him, you want to make sure that they don't rest on their laurels and that these pretty good and competitive efforts over the last year continue. Otherwise, he can go get a better job.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Either way, like you said, I think on the board, it should be a fun off season. Probably not as eventful as this past off season, but fun to track it and track the players that Vanderbilt could retain and do they want to retain certain guys? Which guys that haven't played this year are cleared out of the roster, and so we'll talk all about that. But we got a matchup today, Robbie. Texas and Vandy. I've been saying this. It probably won't start at 2:30. It'll probably be closer to 3, especially with all these reviews. But second time around with this Texas team, I told Joey yesterday I think Texas could be on quit watch big time.
I agree.
Yeah. And so but we've also talked. I think Vandy's better than Texas. They're only a 2.5 point favorite, I think, right now. But nothing scares me in terms of this matchup, even a second time around on a neutral floor, really.
Yeah, I think that Vandy, what we've seen, this is just my opinion, and so take it for what it is. I think they're at their best when they're kind of have that underdog mentality and chip on their shoulder. And you wouldn't think when they are, they've been the better team than Texas the entire season, you wouldn't think that would apply for this game. But I think it kind of does because they've lost the last 2 and not looked very good in either of those games. I believe lost both by double digits and not to elite SEC teams either. It's 2 teams, Arkansas and Georgia, who are good, but they're playing today as well. So they're not at the top of the league. Mm-hmm. So even though they're safely in the tournament, we think, and we can maybe get to that, I do think there's probably a little bit more urgency, I would say, for Vandy compared to the last 2 games where maybe after beating Mizzou in that dramatic game, they could take a deep breath and know that everybody was saying that they're locked into the tournament. Whereas this just feels a little bit different to me. And yeah, I think Texas could be on quit watch too. They're going to need to win like 3 or 4 games in this tournament to get into March Madness. And the writing is on the wall for Rodney Terry based on what I have been hearing for quite a while. So I think that's possible. Now, of course, like Texas has a shot to win the game, But I do like Vandy's chances today overall.
With their path, they could see Texas. Well, if they win, they will see Texas A&M for a second time. That's another team. I know there's probably some Vandy fans that look at that and go, "Oh man, it's gonna be tough to beat the Aggies twice again," and it will be. But is Texas A&M another team, Robbie, that you like that matchup? And it's gonna be hard, but I don't hate that matchup either.
The second round's going to be hard in this conference, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I actually kind of like that matchup potentially for Vandy, and the reason why is honestly going into that road game against Texas A&M, I thought they were going to get blown out. I thought they were going to get destroyed on the boards. Texas A&M was coming off a loss, like every Vandy opponent seems to be coming off a loss.
Yeah.
And I just thought they were going to bludgeon Vandy. Vandy's undersized and probably blow them out, and that's not how it went at all. If you look at the stats this season, there have been some areas where Vandy's lack of size definitely shows up as a negative, but they've been surprisingly competitive in terms of rebounding. I don't think rebounding has necessarily been the issue, because McLaughlin especially is a great rebounder. And I think, even the guards like AJ Hoggard really chips in more than you would expect for a point guard. So given that they, beat A&M on the road and outplayed them on the road, this is a semi-home game in Nashville. Vandy doesn't have to travel. In the last few years, they've played well at Bridgestone. So, I mean, I wouldn't give them an amazing shot of winning 2 games because it's 2 quality opponents. But I think in terms of the draw, honestly, even then, if you move on again, you get Tennessee, and I think that's not that bad of a draw either. Being able to avoid Auburn and Florida in the first 2 games, or at least in the second round, is, pretty good.
Yeah. To me, I don't think Vanderbilt's seed line will move a ton, really, no matter what happens. Now, if they make a run to Saturday, I'm sure they move up a seed line, but you just don't know, because you don't know what happens with other teams around you. There could be bid stealers. But Robbie, as you look at it, even if they lose to Texas, like either way, what are the scenarios in your mind that you think could result in a seed line movement? And people have said Vandy's got a chance of going to Dayton. I don't think so. Do you think so?
I think they've got a shot of going to Dayton, but I would say if they lose today, let me look at the bracket matrix real quick. They've got them as the second 10 seed, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams below Vandy. And some of those teams are going to lose in the first round or their first game of the conference tournament. So they would need to drop 4 spots to end up in Dayton, and that would be with a quad. I think Texas is in the top 50 in net, so that would be a quad 1 neutral court loss, and I just don't think they're going to get dinged that much for that at this point in the season. They haven't lost a game to a team that's not going to make the NCAA tournament so far. That could happen today, but so I would say if they lose this game, I'd say they've got like a 65% chance of starting in the round of 64 and maybe 35% chance of going to Dayton. So I think it's in play, and some of it, like you said, depends on what happens elsewhere. I don't really see them missing the NCAA tournament if they lose today. And now we got to remember that the selection committee every year, there's, a couple of really big surprises, usually whether that's a team is seeded a lot higher or lower than you expect, or somebody misses or makes the tournament who you don't expect. So I don't want to completely rule it out, because sometimes the committee does weird things, but that would, like, I think the chances of missing the tournament entirely, even with the loss today, even if it's a blowout loss, it's pretty remote, like 5% or less, I would say. And it would require a huge shocker.
Yeah, it matters. The tournament matters to Vanderbilt. Talking to Tyler Nickel, he said, look, we're not a lock right now. Even though we might disagree with them, I think we can all agree Vanderbilt will be in the tournament, barring some sort of disaster. Like, worst case scenario for Vandy is probably getting destroyed by Texas, losing by 20 to Texas, and then you have a bunch of bid stealers. But even then, Robbie, like, I don't see a scenario where they don't get in.
I mean, there's not a lot of bid stealers left is the thing. Drake won its conference tournament. Gonzaga won the WCC. So you're really just looking at, Mountain West is not a prime bid stealing conference, because you're going to have potentially, there's like 3 teams in there, 4 teams that are NCAA tournament caliber. So the chances of a bad team winning that tournament are pretty low. You're basically looking at the Atlantic 10. I think that is a realistic, if VCU doesn't win that tournament, then there's going to be a bid stealer. That is realistic. And Memphis, the American, if Memphis doesn't win its conference tournament. So there's not going to be any more than 2 bid stealers likely this season. That's probably a little bit below average. And there could be none. It's possible that there are none.
Yeah, there you go, Bo. Got that question answered. I doubt there are circumstances that Vandy does not get into the tournament.
It would require one of those shockers. Like I remember, this was almost, it may have been exactly 10 years ago when Tulsa got into the NCAA tournament. They played Michigan in the first 4 and got destroyed, and nobody had them in. Nobody had them in. Was it would require the type of shocker that like the CBS crew is then talking about on TV for 10 minutes afterward about how outrageous it is if they don't get in. Because, I think could Vandy get hammered for the non-conference schedule? Yeah, they could. It's one of the worst in the country. But, they did at least have four neutral site games and 1 road game in the non-conference. And, they went 12-1, and the loss was to Drake. And again, they don't have they're not going to have any losses outside of the top 2 quadrants. Their metrics are perfectly decent. So I struggle to see. It's really hard for me to see.
Yeah. And their SEC schedule too. I told this to somebody
above average.
They played Tennessee twice. They played Kentucky twice. They played Missouri twice. Vandy's 8-10, and I forget who put this out on Twitter. Vandy's 8-10 is a lot different than Arkansas's 8-10. Like Arkansas had to play LSU twice, and I forget who else they had to play twice. But their double opponents were a lot different than Vanderbilt, so that will help them as well. Even though non-conference is looked at heavily, I think they have the number 1 strength of schedule in the SEC. I know that's hard for people to understand, but there's 16 teams. You can't play everybody twice.
Yeah, and so then the other thing is they're the 12 seed in the tournament, but they tied for 9th. It was a 4-way tie for 9th. So I would look at it more that way, or at least maybe I think Georgia is going to be seated ahead of them and Mississippi State as well. They're kind of like they're probably the 10th best team in the SEC. In the SEC, we're talking about 13 bids here. So that's for that reason, it's tough to see. Oklahoma did have the great non-conference schedule, so maybe they could be seated above Vandy. That's definitely possible. But I don't know. I mean, we don't even know if Arkansas is going to win today. They're like 3-point favorites. So, if they lose, then there's no way they're going to be ahead of Vandy, because that would be 2 losses to South Carolina, and Vandy doesn't have any bad losses.
Yeah, despite Calipari saying that it doesn't matter. Well, I think it does matter to your team this year in the SEC tournament. Like, you're an 11 seed, you're playing on the first day. I still don't think Arkansas would get left out, but it's kind of funny to me saying that it doesn't matter, despite him being on the bubble with his team. Now they've come on strong here, but that's a little funny to me. All right, we've got some mailbag questions to get to, Robbie. I do want to get to some of those. I've got one more chat question as well. If you guys watching live want to get to any chat questions, feel free to fire away. The mailbag brought to you by Sutherland and Belk, family-owned injury law firm, also sponsoring the chat room. If your loved one has been hurt or in an accident, give Taylor or Russell a call at 615-846-6200 to see what your rights are and if they can help. All right, Steve VU98. Why did we turn the ball over so much against Arkansas? Well, number one, Arkansas is really athletic. They're long. They've got Trevon Brazile, who's a freak athlete. The dunk he had, I don't know if you were at that game, Robbie, but I mean, that was a ferocious slam. And, Billy Mitchell, and they can score too. But I think they made a point to get after Vanderbilt on the defensive end. Vanderbilt didn't play well. I thought that was one of Vanderbilt's worst played games. But I do think that's a good question, and that's something we've talked about here the last week or so. Vanderbilt's turned the ball over more often than at least we've seen for most of SEC play. And if that's something continues, it's going to be tough for them. But if they can clean that up, Robbie, I think this is a team that can find their confidence. But yeah, that Arkansas game was probably the worst showing, at least offensively, I think, or one of the worst showings for Vanderbilt.
I didn't think they competed, honestly. I thought it looked like they had their heads up their butts, and it looked like they had just clinched the tournament and mailed it in. Just being honest.
Yep. Vandy fan 615, Trilly Donovan said a top 25 basketball roster will cost about $5 million. Do you agree? Could it be even more than that? Robbie?
Yeah, I mean, he's he's an expert and he knows a lot more people across all of college basketball nationally than I do. So if he's saying that and that's recent, then I think that's probably pretty good information. I would have thought that that's a little low, and then a top 25 roster probably would be more than that. There was an article that I put on the board yesterday, I think that was from ESPN, that reported that the Big East is going to have $5 million alone in rev sharing per school average next season, and ACC might have $4 million, and both of those are going to be higher than the SEC average because maybe the ACC is cutting a little bit in some other area, either baseball or football, and Big East doesn't even have football. So, of course, then you add NIL on top of that, and the SEC is still going to have stronger NIL infrastructures at its schools than ACC schools do, and for sure than Big East schools do. But so 5, if the Big East is averaging 5, then that seems low to me as an average in terms of total budget. But, I don't really want to discount what Trilly is saying there. It's an interesting data point. I mean, I think if you have 5, which Vandy is going to have more than 5, then you're at least in a good enough spot to be competitive and have an NCAA tournament roster for sure.
Well, and what you're also seeing, and I think you mentioned this on the board too, like the ACC, like North Carolina is not making a move on their head coach. Yeah. I'm blanking on his name. I don't know why.
Yeah,
Hubert Davis.
They're not making. I don't know what they're doing over there.
I mean, they're not making a move. They're hiring a GM. They're saying they're going to put more into NIL. So I think you'll see that from these ACC schools. I know NC State made a move on Kevin Keats, but ACC is going to probably come on stronger than they have in the NIL world. So I think that's something to watch in the portal, recruiting. And maybe I'm wrong there, but I think the ACC will that could make it tougher.
I think this is going to be their worst season, and it reminds me of when the SEC, about 10 years ago,
only got 3 in,
4 teams in, and they, had a come to Jesus chat essentially, and came up with this plan to get a lot better over the next 10 years, and they executed it. I think that's what's going to happen for the ACC.
WKane 5, as it relates to this team winning tournament games, is it as simple as making or missing shots and staying out of foul trouble? That's how I see it. Honestly, that's a good observation.
I think those are 2 pretty big factors. Yeah. There's a little more to it than that. But I mean, the foul trouble, I would honestly say, is huge because, I mean,
it's massive.
You need McLaughlin and Carey to play most of the game. Actually, I like what JQ Roberts has brought in a little bit of reserve minutes recently, but I don't know that. I mean, he's not a center, so I don't know that you want to rely on him in the crucible, the NCAA tournament for major stretches.
Making and missing shots, I don't like. That's a thing for every team. I do think Vanderbilt, it's not as simple as making and missing shots. Like if they're missing shots, but staying out of foul trouble, and you're getting looks inside of McLaughlin and Carey's playing well down low, and they're playing physical, I think that could counteract that. But the thing about it too, Robbie, and we haven't seen MJ Collins. Did he not play against Arkansas? He
was definitely out for the Georgia game. I can't remember if he against Arkansas or not.
So we didn't see Collins in the Georgia game. I thought they missed him. I thought you could have used, because he's a guy that's he's hit a couple of big threes in a lot of their wins in SEC play. So you have Collins who can shoot if Edwards is off, or you have Nickel as well. We've seen McLaughlin pop out and hit some threes as well. So, I mean, the making missing shots doesn't worry me as much as foul trouble. Like if McLaughlin gets in early foul trouble, and you also get now Carey's, the pressure's on him too. So the foul trouble is like, that's the first check mark they've got to avoid, Robbie, especially in tournament play. And teams know that, which is going to make it hard.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that's fair.
Okay, we've got another one from Vandy Fan 17. Which player do you think will step up for us against Texas today? Your pick to click today, Robbie.
That's a good question. How about Tyler Nickel? I mean, it feels like whenever they play well, that's kind of who steps up, right?
Yeah, I was going to say Nickel as well. I feel like Carey is a guy that in this matchup, he played well when Texas came to Nashville at Memorial.
I like that
Like
too. Yeah.
like Shedrick, he's okay, but he's
Cedric
like
is not very physical. He's big. He's not. He's a little soft, I would say. And I
yeah,
think Carey has his faults, but he's not soft.
yeah. So I'll go Carey. I like nickel as well too, though. All right, last mailbag here, Steve. Again, what do we need to do today to be a lock? Just show up, keep it close, win. I think we hit on that earlier. I think they're already a lock. That I could be going a little too far there, but today, just win. If you win, you're in, and that's the mentality they have.
If they win today, then not even some sort of shocker like the Tulsa thing that I mentioned would result in them being out. It wouldn't be possible.
Okay, Golden Dad, we got a few chat questions here. I hope it's not another 2000 situation, but if we lose today, would you guys say the Doors get a 10 seed?
Yeah,
if they lose today, yeah, it could be 11 though. I mean, they're 11 right now, and according to Lenardi, but he's not.
So the other thing is that due to some of the other bubble teams struggling, it looks like, based on what I've seen, is that usually the first four tends to be 11 seeds, but that depends on whether there are, when teams like Drake, the best teams in mid-major conferences win their conference tournament, those teams sometimes are able to get up to an 11 or a 10, and that bumps the at-large teams down. So the crappy, Ohio States and Xaviers of the world could end up being a 12 and playing in the first four. And so that means not all of the 11s who are at-larges will be in the first four. So I could see them being in 11 and not necessarily playing in Dayton.
Right.
That's possible.
Yeah, if they lose, that's what I would guess. They're not necessarily in Dayton, but they're still in 11. They're just a normal 11. Let's see here. Let's go to Justin here. Who are our biggest flight risks? I know we're not in the off season yet, but I think Edwards will be really interesting. I think they'll have a decision to make on him because look, there's going to be a lot of guards in the portal, and at his size, do you want to get bigger, right? I mean, and nothing against Edwards. I think they'll have a decision to make on him. What happens with, like, if Jordan Williams exits and JQ Roberts exits, you've got room there. What happens with Kajani Wright, I think, is really interesting.
Yeah.
Other than that, you lose Hogard, you lose Magnon, you lose Huffman. But I think Edwards. I think Edwards might be the biggest flight risk.
Man, if he leaves, that's a mistake by Vandy. Honestly, he's third team All SEC, and they're losing Hogard, right, and Huffman. You're losing too many guards. Yeah. I suspect they'll take care of him. I think you're not wrong for saying he's a flight risk because, I mean, he's had one or two kind of like open disagreements with Byington on the court, and it seems like he wants to be playing more minutes. But I think he'll stay.
Yeah. I only say that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I only say that because I don't think there really are many, if at all, flight risks.
No, not a lot. I mean, MJ Collins, if he wants to play more minutes, but I'm pretty sure this is his junior season, and so he's an academic junior, and that makes things difficult from an eligibility standpoint. It's very difficult for rising seniors to transfer and stay eligible because you likely lose some credits at your next school. And you have to catch up, take a million classes in the summer, and sometimes that's not even possible. Otherwise, you're not eligible. I think from a basketball standpoint, Collins could make a little bit of sense, but I don't know that that's really going to be on the table for him academically.
Yeah, and I mean, look, Karis Bilal probably won't be on the roster. You would guess, but he hasn't played at all this year. But yeah, like Carey, why would he leave? Why would Tanner leave? I don't really see many flight risks.
Tyler Tanner and Tyler Nickel, I think, are very, very likely coming back. They've already had negotiations with the collective.
Yeah. Let's see. Justin, again, give me an over-under on one stat that will decide Vanderbilt's postseason success. Interesting.
How about Devin McLaughlin over 25.5 minutes per game?
I like that one. Or even you could get granular and say 3.5 fouls.
Yeah, under 3.5 fouls. Yeah, I like that better. Because, I guess if they win a blowout or get blown out, his minutes don't, he could not play that much. I think the fouls thing is better. That's good.
Yeah. Let's see. We have a few comments. I'm surprised teams let Tyler Nickel get as open as he does. Yeah, but the thing about Nickel, he's tall. He's 6'6", 6'7", so he can rise up. It may seem like a guy's not on him, but he does a really good job of shooting with hands in his face. Okay, Willie, last one here. We'll get to and we'll wrap it up. A decision has to be made on Edwards. They want to get bigger. I guess 17 points per game in 24 minutes grows on trees.
I agree with that comment.
Yeah, I do too. I only say that because of what I've heard. And like you mentioned, Robbie, it hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows this year.
It hasn't. And
the portal is the portal. Like you never know when a team comes by and really likes him and drops a bag.
Yeah, I would say though he has the same limitations as MJ Collins in that I believe, pretty sure he's an undergrad, right? He doesn't have the grad patch on his jersey, right? If he's an undergrad, then this would be his senior season, or I'm sorry, next year would be his senior season. He's like an academic junior, and that again, that makes
JUCO thing
difficult to transfer.
Does the Pavia rule apply to Edwards, or does he even try it?
Yeah, he gets an extra year. So he's a basketball sophomore right now, but I think he's an academic junior.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's crazy that this guy's going to be playing 2 seasons from now probably, because I love him as a college player. I think some of the occasional criticism of him, like I think he's the best player on the team, and I think he should be playing more minutes than he has been playing, honestly. I get the defensive limitations are definitely there, but I don't think he's probably an NBA prospect, because he could maybe play in the NBA, but he's not going to be like drafted due to the size. And so I could see him. He's probably going to play out his entire college eligibility. So he'll be in college basketball for 2 more seasons, I think.
I got to wrap this up soon, but how about the way the Pavia thing has filtrated? Because you've seen players. I saw this player on Twitter tweet out, I forget who it was, but thank goodness for Pavia. It's really helped some players. But Alberto Ozuna, for example, at Tennessee, for the baseball team, that hasn't worked out. I wonder is it going to be universal where, okay, Pavia rule everybody? It doesn't seem like everybody is benefiting from this.
You have to be within a certain age range. So I think you have to be high school class of 2020 or younger in order to be eligible. So that's why Stephen Hubbard couldn't come back. I think probably, if I'm being honest, I think maybe he could have sued and won that, because that's a pretty arbitrary rule. But I don't know. I think it's not ideal, but there are going to be some pretty cool stories that spring up as a result of this. Like, I know a friend of mine, his brother, was a JUCO player and was at the low major level and did really well. And now he's going to be able to, he never thought he was going to make any money playing basketball. He was a late bloomer, and now he's going to make 6 figures next season. Yeah. And who knows if he's ever going to make 6 figures again. We don't know for sure. And so that's, an amazing life-changing opportunity for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Willie, talking about Jason Edwards, Miles College,
power rankings at first.
Dodge City, North Texas, and Vanderbilt. That
would be tough to, you just at some point also these guys get sick and tired of moving around so much.
Right. Yeah. All right, Robbie. You got a pick for today? I think Vandy gets it done. I think they meet Texas A&M. I'm not ready to say they beat Texas A&M yet, and maybe I'll do that tomorrow. But I do think they get the win today.
Yeah, I'll say close game at halftime, and Vandy separates a little bit, wins by 9.
There you go. That's Robbie Weinstein. Robbie, thanks for hopping in.
Thanks for having me.
That's Robbie Weinstein right here at Vandy 24/7. Really appreciate his time. He'll be headed down to the arena. I think he was going to the early game. I will be there for the night session tonight. Not able to go to the Vanderbilt game, but looking forward to this SEC tournament. Best time of the year. So Vanderbilt, Texas, 2:30 today down at Bridgestone. Vanderbilt baseball in action this weekend. They do not host. They travel to Auburn, Alabama. They will play the 23rd ranked Tigers. Big series opener in the SEC. Can't believe SEC play is already here for baseball, which is wild. So game 1 Friday, game 2 Saturday, game 3 Sunday down there at Auburn. That'll do it for another Vandy 24/7 live episode. Give us a review and a 5-star rating. That helps us get noticed. If you're listening and haven't subscribed to Vandy247.com yet, what are you waiting on? Please do. It's easy to do. Just go to Vandy247.com. Got all kinds of VIP stories available. You can get daily insights, and the latest scoop on all things Vanderbilt is, as good as it gets. A limited time $1 VIP membership available right now. Got some good stories up there. We'll have coverage all day for Vanderbilt and Texas on the board. We'll have post-game show after the game with me, Joey, and Brandon, and press conferences as well. So looking forward to it today. Thanks, everybody, for checking in. For Robbie Weinstein, I'm Billy Derrick. Thanks for listening to another episode of